change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and it is a privilege to be here with two wonderful leaders to lead this panel discussion. Our progress in Rhode Island is due to the steadfast leadership of Governor Mondo and so many partners in this room. So we've all worked together with the governor. She's promoted a green bond that helps us alleviate land, protect open space, mitigate stormwater pollution. She's done 2 executive orders, one to lead by example in terms of reducing CO2 emissions, another to create the Chief Resiliency Officer and really focus on resiliency adaptation. She has assembled, I think, an amazing team of people and fostered teamwork in a way that I haven't seen before across state government, adding the PUC department and the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to our Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council, and really exhorting all of us to work together and to work with you. So thrilled to have the governor here today to give the perspective of the executive branch in the state in terms of what can we do about climate change. You all know Senator Whitehouse well. He's an amazing. Let me just say 2 things. He's given over 180 wake-up speeches on the floor. And truly been the leading and most respected voice on climate change in Washington. He has also been the sponsor of the legislation to create a carbon fee at the national level, among many other bills to protect our oceans, to promote carbon capture. But that, I think, is quite known for that, and that is one of the things I would like to talk about today. So, with no further ado, I'm going to be asking questions to each of the panelists, and then give them an opportunity at the end to do some closing statements. As we all know and just discussed, President Trump announced his plan to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. This, among other actions, really leaves a void in our national leadership. So I'd like to ask you, Governor, how has that affected Rhode Island? How has that decision affected Rhode Island, and what have you done about it?
Good morning. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So I think we left out one thing from the Senator's introduction, which is that it's his birthday today. And I can't top the treasure, I'm not going to have you sing, but I do want to say happy birthday. So first, I want to begin by thanking you all in the room. It was really gratifying for me to walk in here and see the Rhode Island team, all of us, working hard, each occupying our own station in this fight against climate change. My own team, I feel so blessed. It's amazing. You guys are amazing. You know, what I've tried to do is set up a team across departments so everybody can work together. So Carol Grant the team seamlessly works together, not in silos, which is unusual for government. We have meetings as a group, which I go to, which is, Grover from CRMC, Mackie from DPUC, Carol and her team from Energy, Janet from DEM. We come together as a group to set, Department of Health, come together as a group to say, how are we all going to fight the challenges of climate change? Yes, it's depressing. Ken says this is depressing. But there is opportunities. There is opportunity if we work together, and that's how we have to approach it. The president is on the wrong side of science and on the wrong side of history. And pulling out of Paris was the wrong thing to do for America. Now, I can't stop that. But what I can do is say full steam ahead here in Rhode Island. Right after he made what I thought was an unfortunate decision, I was one of the first, second, third, or fourth governor to sign on to the Climate Change Alliance. And at that time, I was also planning the governor's conference, which we hosted here in July in Providence. And I used that as an opportunity to talk to governors in a bipartisan way, talking to some of my Republican governors saying, come on, this isn't politics, this isn't partisan. If the future of our planet and our shared sustainability is partisan, we're doing something wrong. So I'm proud to have been one of the first governors to sign Rhode Island onto that effort, which commits us to the Paris Accord at a statewide level as it relates to reducing our emissions. There is no substitute for leadership at the national level, but by coming together with other governors, we're showing we're not going to stop. I should say I feel hugely fortunate to have Senator Whitehouse in the ring for Rhode Island in Washington. The country's lucky, but we're lucky, and it's the whole team. And I have a great deal of pride, around that. We're going to have many other long panel here, but in addition to that, we've set a goal to 1,000 megawatt goal in order to increase by a factor of 10 our clean energy resources here in Rhode Island. When I announced that goal, we were at about 100. We're now at about 230 megawatts. We're on our way to 1,000. This gives Carol, this gives Carol. I think it was the appropriate goal because my team was simultaneously scared and excited, which tells me it's right on that edge of aggressive and bold but doable if we work together. Janet just did an amazing job this summer signing us up to more rigorous RGGI standards. She was a leader in that. She's the most important person you'll ever meet. But she kept calling me, saying, Gov, can you help me with New York? Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Should we keep pushing? We cut that coalition together. And those are aggressive goals that we've signed up to. We're going to hit them. So I'll stop there because we're going to go on. But the bottom line is, I think the president is on the wrong side of science and history. We're going to keep leading in Rhode Island. There are a lot of things states can do on a ground level in order to move this forward. And by the way, we're on the front lines of it. Right? Like we are on the front lines of it. We don't live, and this is not directed to you, Senator, but we don't live in a cocoon of the White House. Like, I look around here and I see businesses whose businesses were flooded. And, I think Cheryl Merchant is here, is going to be here. Let's talk about the reality of what happens when there's a flooding in the Blackstone River. Let's talk about what happened for Rhode Island businesses and families with Superstorm Sandy. Let's talk about the families that I see and meet on a regular basis who have health problems because of oppressive heat on a regular basis in the summer. Let's talk about the families that we meet who face food insecurity or a contaminated food system. So, this is real on the ground in Rhode Island. And again, I just feel super grateful as I continue to look around this room and see people like, let's come together as a state and continue to move this forward.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse, how is the decision to withdraw from Paris affecting you and your colleagues and perspectives from Washington, D.C.?
It's actually been kind of animating. Trump was going to suck at enforcing the Paris Agreement anyway, right? He was just going to do a horrible job. So the fact that he made it absolutely clear about pulling out, at least he's tried to, Dr. Tillerson tried to back it up a little bit, has really been quite motivating. It has brought a lot more people into my office to say, what can we do, from the corporate sector, the NGO sector, and so forth. I think many of the NGOs here, certainly at the national level, I assume Save the Day and others, saw a surge in activity and membership and calls. At the national level, it was really like a single best recruiting thing Trump could have done. And it put some of our Republican colleagues in an awkward position because they were kind of happy with theatrically digging in their heels against climate action while knowing that climate action was happening anyway. They could get the best of both worlds. They could behave irresponsibly for the sake of their big donors, but at the same time be able to know that this wasn't all going to blow up in their faces in a terrible way because of the horrible decisions that they were espousing. They basically allowed themselves to be theatrically dragged behind the Obama administration initiatives, complaining but not really having much effect. So now they've stopped everything, and they own that, and it is making them increasingly nervous. And I think it is not for nothing that the long drought of Republican activity on carbon dioxide emissions that began with the Citizens United decision. Remember, before that, I was in the Senate for 3 years before that decision, and there were Republican climate change proposals everywhere. Everywhere. And it was only after Citizens United, when the fossil fuel industry got all that new political artillery, that they shut them down. And so that was that. But it's now suddenly that people are starting to emerge again in new ways. And the one I can mention, I'd like to call people out because it does put them in the spotlights of the fossil fuel industry. But Lindsay called himself out, telling Time Magazine that he was working with me on my carbon fee bill. I don't think he would have done that had it not been for this sense that, we've really fouled this up now, and we're going to have to be a little bit more responsible somehow, somewhere. Nobody wants to be the first, kind of, over the, you think of the old World War I movies, nobody wants to be the first ones over the trench tops. So there's a lot of back and forth, but I am in a lot of conversations with Republican colleagues about getting stuff done. They know perfectly well, most of them, that the president is wrong, and they're worried, as any experienced politician would be, at the amateurish, conflicted, indeed even corrupted nature of so many of these appointees. If you've been around a while, you know the people who come to office with those kind of conflicts of interest end up getting themselves in trouble. They just do. It's the way of nature. And so I think there's a lot of concern about that as well, that some of these people are going to blow themselves up and they're going to own that as well. So it's nowhere near as bad as you would think. And let me close with one specific example. There was a question about ARPA-E and the ARPA-E budgets for Todd. And this is kind of one of those interesting examples because the Trump administration basically slaughtered ARPA-E in its proposed budget. The result was, back in April, when we renegotiated the new funding proposal for the government, the Trump administration was effectively not even in the room. That negotiation took place between Republicans and Democrats in the House and Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. And one of the reasons that it took place that way was because the Republicans in the House and the Senate did not want any part of the crazy Trump-Mulvaney budget. They couldn't walk them in back off the ledge. They were afraid they'd get torpedoed. They knew that the budget was ridiculous and would get them in huge trouble at home. So what do? Just tell them to run along and negotiate with us. That's what happened. I think that's going to happen again in September when we have to refund the government. And ARPA-E got fully funded, as I recall. So, you know, there's the talk and there's the worry and there's the crazy stuff that is often coming out of the Trump administration. But there are also a lot of Republicans who don't want to go down that road. They don't necessarily want to call the guy out. But if they can have private negotiations with us to settle the funding of the government without Trump in the room, they're for it. So there's a lot of quiet positivity that is happening, even though the Trump administration itself is fully disgraceful on this issue.
Let me ask you start with you on the next question. So we heard from Mr. Stern on the Paris Agreement about each nation determining how they were going to move forward to meet the emissions reductions targets. Most of us felt that the Clean Power Plan was a very big part of the plan for the U.S. for moving forward. So now that that also has been withdrawn, what do you see as the future for clean energy and a lot of the initiatives that we felt would move forward sort of driven under that plan?
Well, first of all, the Clean Power Plan has really only been withdrawn kind of, because a great many states with very considerable energy sectors who were participating in that continued to participate in the plan after the Supreme Court stated. It didn't stop them. And Trump so-called withdrawing from the plan hasn't stopped them either. So there's an enormous section of the country that is fully going forward with the Clean Power Plan as if it was still in place, because it's something they know they want to do anyway. Rhode Island is one of them, and I salute Governor Orlando for her leadership on that. So, you know, that's one piece of it. The second piece is that the reason that they had to do the Clean Power Plan is because the fossil fuel industry had Congress locked down. There are better ways to solve this problem than the Clean Power Plan. That was just the best way you could do it without Congress helping you. So what we've been working on is what I think is the most effective and efficient way to solve this, which is putting a price on carbon.
And I'm going to ask you more about that.
Okay, well, I'll stand on that then. But one thing to bear in mind as you're talking about this is particularly when you hear the whining and complaining about the fossil fuel industry, about how there are these like terrible subsidies to clean energy that are distorting markets and all that sort of stuff. There's a group called the International Monetary Fund. It's quite well known. I'm not going to explain it now. You can Google it if you don't know who they are. They're really smart. They have no connection to anybody there, don't have a conflict of interest. And they've pegged the annual subsidy for fossil fuel, annual subsidy for fossil fuel, just in the United States alone, at $700 billion. So for these guys sitting on a $700 billion annual subsidy to be whining and moaning about the tiny little tax credits that we give for solar and for wind and so forth is factually and morally outrageous. And what we need to fight back against, you know, you put any product out there with a $700 billion annual subsidy behind it, you're going to get too much of that product, and that's what we have to fight against. The Clean Power Plan helped. A lot of it's going forward anyway, and we're going to, I think, be able to legislate on this before long. And in that case, I think there are ways to be far stronger even than the Clean Power Plan.
Governor, you mentioned already the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. In Rhode Island, that was our mechanism for complying with the Clean Power Plan. And in fact, we've already seen almost 50% reduction in our electric sector for major power plants through RGGI. So we were already on track to exceed the goals of the Clean Power Plan. So my question is, again, with the withdrawal of that and work you do, what do you see as the future of clean power in Rhode Island?
Yeah, so as we say, as the Senator said, Rhode Island is, we're actually already ahead of our CPP targets, and we're going to continue to move forward aggressively without clean, without clean power plant. But politically, I do worry that, this is, I talked to my Republican counterparts, governors in other states. Unfortunately, this is, being a climate change denier is often a political choice. It is viewed, you said earlier, it's get money from certain special interests, you have to say things which you may or may not agree with, or which you may or may not have always agreed with. So for Rhode Island, we're ahead of our targets. We're going to continue to be ahead of our targets. We've signed up and been a leader in even more aggressive RGGI targets. We're going to use everything at our disposal to move forward with wind and solar and renewables. But I'm disappointed and saddened by the lack of leadership from the national level, because I know from talking to governors, I'm not going to name names, if they had some cover on a political level from the highest levels of their party, it would be easier for them to do the right thing politically, and that's a problem. In Rhode Island, obviously, I'm incredibly proud to be the site of North America's first offshore wind farm. It's fantastic. Wouldn't have happened without the hard work of a lot of folks in here, particularly including CRNC and Grover's great work with the ocean mapping, Save the Bay. You guys played a huge role in making that happen, and it's real. as an aside, I was in New York City the other day, and I was working out on a machine, and an ad, I was, in the middle of someplace in New York City, and an ad came up about a picture of the offshore wind farm. And I was like, that's a flying state. And I started yelling on the treadmill, and the guy next to me thought I was crazy. And hey, that's Rhode Island.
Governor, I was flying home on the plane last night, actually ended up being early this morning. And the magazine that I was reading, its back cover was a picture of our wind farm, and it was an advertisement for Citibank, which is so proud of his parts and lending.
I think that's
So there you go.
I
Another
was
example.
trying not to fall off my treadmill, so I didn't focus on it. I just got so excited when I saw this and said, that's Rhode Island. I see Doug Sabet is here. I've had a great time visiting solar companies that are growing, and we're doing everything we can to support that. I was in Davies vocational school the other day. We're aligning our curriculum to make sure we teach folks. When I was there, they were doing installation of solar panels at the school and teaching the kids how to do this, because that's another piece of the puzzle. So we have to move forward aggressively. We're going to participate in regional procurement of renewables. Massachusetts is taking a leadership role in that, and we're going to participate in that. So my message is we're doing everything we can in Rhode Island. Everything we can, on a regional level, on a local level, technology level, job training level, to move as fast as we can towards more clean energy resources. By the way, this creates a lot of jobs. When the report came out a couple of years ago about job growth in the clean energy space, you'll have to make sure I don't get this wrong, but we were projecting like 14 or 15% increase in jobs.
I'm looking at Carol.
Helping Carol.
66%.
No, that's what we
Yeah,
got.
14 or 15.
But anyway, the point of it is, we projected something, and we came in at almost a 70% increase in job growth in renewable energy. So this is about jobs. Those kids at Davies are going to get good jobs. We have, I don't know if Wendy Mackey's here, but the Maritime, we have a Real Jobs Initiative, a job training program with our Maritime folks. So for me, this is a no-brainer. It puts people to work, it makes Rhode Island a leader, and makes Rhode Island a better place to live.
Let me ask you one quick follow-up, because your energy plan talks about clean, reliable, and affordable.
Yeah.
Are you concerned that there might be upward pressure on the cost of energy through use of clean energy?
Am I concerned? Absolutely. But does that make me think we should go any slower? No. So I do worry about affordability, and it is absolutely a balance. And when we go through this RFP, our goal is to have a mix of energy, which is affordable and sustainable and clean. And so we will be carefully, my team, Carol and others, Nick, will lead us through that exercise, Mackie, trying to balance affordability with clean energy. And as the senator so rightly said, subsidies are massive on the other side. Look, it wasn't that long ago. Winter's coming, right? In a few months, it's probably going to be really cold.
Like Game of Thrones.
It wasn't that long ago that we had a super cold winter and, prices went through the roof. And I have a couple folks in the grocery store and they're worried about that, so absolutely. But I think we can do both.
So this now comes to my carbon pricing question, but I'd like to start with Governor Raimondo.
You're up here, knows a lot about it.
So I'm going to start with you, Governor, and ask, that's been an idea that many people think the time has come for. So what is your perspective on carbon pricing?
I agree, and I want, obviously, to give the senator a lot of time on this one since he's such a leader on the issue. By the way, I think you're successful. I think it ought to be done at a federal level, and you have my full support to make that happen. My friend Timmons, who's here, my friend on me for some time on this issue. And I thank you for that. And thank you for that. So I support carbon pricing. I think it is the right long-term solution. We need to figure out what the right market, what's the right market. And to your point, Janet, around balancing the affordability with clean energy, that's the question. And I think defining the market as just Rhode Island is probably too small and not sustainable. And, probably would I don't think it would be an efficient market. And I'm worried that it would tip the balance too much. I worry about the affordability ramifications of that. Having said that, I do think it's the right way to move, but I think we have to be thoughtful about it. So to just say, yes, carbon pricing the market is Rhode Island, I don't think that's a thoughtful approach. And I don't think it would be successful. As you know, I'm a gigantic supporter of Reggie, and I want to move even to more aggressive carbon pricing. The legislature passed a bill requiring us to cut it. They did not, however, appropriate any money to pay for this study. So I'm committed to raising money philanthropically to do a study. Because I want to move us in that direction. I think it's the right answer. And I want to do it thoughtfully so we get it right for Rhode Island.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse.
Well, I agree with the governor, and I think that the legislative work on this has been very well aligned, that a carbon price is the way to go, but that given our geography, the boundary issues become really bad for Rhode Island if we aren't working with other states around us. So I think there's the prospect of a regional carbon pricing regime, as you're seeing develop out west. Hard to work through the New Hampshire legislature, hard to work through the Maine governor. Were it not for those things, Reggie, I think, would be a good vehicle for that. And I applaud Timmons and Josh Miller and everybody who's worked on the Rhode Island bill and its linkage to Massachusetts to lead together. And I know Massachusetts is working on a bill of their own. That kind of pressure bubbling up helps us a lot at the federal level. A carbon price has a lot of appealing characteristics. The first is it's the most efficient thing, because it affects all the signals. And you're not just dealing with regulators and people in utility companies making decisions, you're dealing with everybody making decisions in their lives. And it changes the whole direction of markets. And it will explode investment in new technologies. I mean, you want to light up renewables, put the price on carbon will help offset their massive $700 billion a year disgraceful subsidy. The second thing that's appealing about it is that if you go and listen to Republicans and those who are willing to talk about climate change and think through to a solution, they virtually every single one of them come to the exact same place, which is a price on carbon whose revenues go back to the public so it's not paying for more big government, and that is border adjustable so that a concrete company in Texas doesn't get wiped out by a concrete company across the border in Mexico. So basically, we're at the stage right now where they have said, this is our proposal. Now, legislatively, they're not able to do that because of the political forces I described earlier. But you've got 3 former secretaries of the Treasury who all said this is the way to go, all Republicans, 4 former EPA administrators, all Republicans, retired members of Congress, and the leadership of the Republican and conservative economic think tankery, if that's a word, like those Holzekins and Arthur Laffer, the famous or infamous Laffer curve. That's a big group of people, and they all come to the same place. So it doesn't make sense for me to fight over some other solution when the Republicans are signaling that when they're politically able to do this, this is where they want to be. Plus cap and trade, which is the alternative program to a carbon fee. And I say fee rather than tax deliberately, because a tax implies that the money goes to the government. That's what taxes do, they raise revenues for the government to spend. This would be revenue neutral per the desires of the Republicans, so that's fine with me. But I think we get to call it a fee at that point and not a tax. Cap and trade requires us to go into the weird business of how you set up the market that is going to be traded. And the suspicion in the Republican Party is very strong that that's going to be corrupted, smelly, self-dealing, and particularly in the wake of the Wall Street meltdown of 2008, to try to sell that additional load of complexity is, I think, an unnecessary burden. It doesn't improve the result, it doesn't make it any easier for people, it actually makes it more complicated, it makes it a way harder political lift, and the Republicans are signaling where they want us to go. So, to me, we are ready to go with a carbon fee bill very like my own. There's a chance it could even be a solution in the current tax reform if the Republicans find themselves in yet another box canyon and can't get the votes to do what they need to do. If they need Democratic votes, I've got about 40 for them on this. So, you know, there's a real, I think, a strong possibility here. And, you know, fingers crossed. If I weren't an optimist, I wouldn't be doing what I do.
Thank you. I guess I start with you. I'm alternating the next question. Let me just give one short commercial for the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, because it was the U.S.'s first cap and trade program for carbon emissions, and we have a proposal now that the governor endorsed to increase the reductions by 30% from 2020 and extend the program through 2030. In that case, we reinvest the funds in clean energy efficiency, and I think that has been part of the magic that we put the tens of millions that we get through the sale of the allowance to pollute back into the efforts that reduce CO2 emissions in our state. So it's been terrific, and I agree, we feel optimistic that we might get other states in the Mid-Atlantic to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and expand it. However, it's just about the electricity, the energy sector. So it doesn't do anything about transportation or heating, which proportionally are growing in terms of overall emissions. So we're going to keep working on that. And in a perfect world, that would be a wonderful mechanism to add transportation and some other parts of the economy.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I can say, I worry a lot about the transportation aspect of this equation, which often doesn't get nearly enough attention, even though it is, in fact, a giant part of the problem. I will tell you, and I don't know what you think, Sheldon, but when I talk about this, I'm the chair of the CONAG, which is the Northeast Governors Group. We have some agreement in a bipartisan way around the renewable energy RFP, some agreement around RGGI, though not perfect, about Maine. No agreement on the Transportation Climate Initiative. And when I put my toe in the water and say, guys, we got to tackle transportation, there's an awful lot of political pushback. Janet mentioned one of the executive orders I did was a lead by example. So I said, okay, the state government of Rhode Island, we issued energy efficiency goals, which we're beating. We issued renewable goals, which are on path to hit. And we issued a goal around making the state fleet of vehicles 25% emission free. And we are on our path to do that. We're installing electric vehicle charging stations. And I'm very proud of that work, but truthfully, it is a drop in the bucket. So this is an area that I think this is going to require political action, political will developed, and the senator's exactly right. That's why we need a carbon-based system. But if you were to say to me, what am I worried about, that's my answer.
Thanks, Governor. So, Senator, you often mention all you need is a ruler and a thermometer to see that climate change is already here in Rhode Island with over 9 inches of sea level rise seen by the Newport tide gauge, over 10 inches of additional rain every year, 3 degrees Fahrenheit increase in the waters of Marietta Bay that very much affect the biota there. So, and now we've got all these storms. So I just have two questions from your perspective on this. the issue of resiliency. What more can we do from the vantage point of the U.S. Senate? And what do we need to do to make Rhode Island safer? And then I'll ask you, Governor.
The issue of resiliency is really going to be profound for us. We have two very significant flooding vulnerabilities. One we saw in the floods of 5 years ago when all of our rivers burst their banks. Highway 95 was closed for flooding. The Amtrak had to stop for flooding. We lost an enormous amount of, particularly in the textile area, because a lot of the textile factories are along the side of rivers for historic reasons, and the damage was really significant.
You should mention the wastewater treatment facility.
Well, we've had to, I've just been to two. The Warwick wastewater treatment facility has now got a huge berm wall around it to protect against the next one. And then on the ocean side, we've got the other risk, which is the sea level rise and storm surge and all of that. And we pack 10 extra inches of water out into the sea, and nobody's done a very good study yet on how that piles up into storm surge. But I can promise you it's more than 10 inches. We don't know what the multiplier is. And we're headed that right now, Governor tells us, for 9 vertical feet. Not storm surge, sea level rise. Then throw storm surge on that. And so, you see these efforts like Narragansett has now built a big berm around their sewage treatment plant to defend it from flooding. The County of Warren is here. They're in the middle of their study right now on what they do about their sewage treatment facility, which is located in the floodplain. But I was just told this morning, they're looking at 40 years, and then they have to abandon the site. It becomes unsalvageable at that point. So that's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to take place. And we enjoy a beautiful coastal environment. We enjoy a lot of beautiful coastal homes. There's going to be a lot of damage done with 9 feet of sea level rise to those coastal properties. That's going to be a huge loss. And behind, you go up 9 feet and you go back quite a long way, depending on where you are. Actually, Newport does reasonably well because it's kind of rocky coast. Western Newport becomes a new island, Castle Hill becomes an island, downtown gets flooded, but a lot remains. Go up to Barrington and take a look at the map. Barrington becomes the new Great Salt Lake at the top of the bay. And there's a lot of valuable property in Barrington that potentially becomes unmortgageable, uninsurable, and unsellable. And you got folks like Freddie Mac, the big federal mortgage insurance massive entity, now warning that when this hits those coastal property values, when you start to not be able to mortgage, insure, or sell, the resulting economic crash, they expect to be worse than the 2008 mortgage meltdown. We lived through that here in Rhode Island. We got hit hard. We got knocked to our knees by that and struggled back to our feet. To have to go through that again, and now on climate, and it's going to be much worse in Rhode Island than other states just because of our geography. We're so concentrated there. So it's really, really vital to us that we get ahead of these issues and look at these, what's these storms mean.
After Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria, are some of your colleagues also?
They're getting there. They're getting there. I've got 2 colleagues from Louisiana who are Republicans who don't want to talk about this too much, but they see their governor declare the coast of Louisiana a state of emergency. They see the papers in Louisiana reporting on how towns and properties are having to be abandoned because they're being lost to the rising seas. They're also sinking down there as well, which doesn't help them either. So it's gotten a lot more real, and I have had many private conversations with senators and saying, how can they deny it still when all these storms? Well, how about you? Well, I know I'm getting there with you. Just kidding, That's kind of the conversation we had. It made a big difference, though. It made a big difference, and I think the fact that so much of the just kind of plain regular neutral news, like the Weather Channel stuff about it, was actually talking about climate change and what was coming and how it's going to be worse and all of that. So it has had an effect, but to Todd Stern's point earlier, there's not an appreciation yet for the immediacy and scale of this problem. They think that they kind of tiptoed their way into it, and it's going to be okay.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, keep your fingers crossed. I don't think that. I think we've got to lean in way, way harder.
Governor, how about you? What actions can we take to make Rhode Island more resilient?
By the way, I agree with everything Senator said, but this is a political problem, which is people, when on a day like today, when the sun's out and everything looks good, it's hard to convince the average person that resiliency is a crisis, climate change is a crisis, and we have to take action today. We have to, after Sandy or Harvey or capture people's attention for a period of, not people in this room, but decision makers, whatnot. So the challenge for all of us is to figure out how do we bring the crisis forward, even listening to the senator talk. That will happen to Barrington if we don't get ourselves organized. But when people hear 20, 30 years from now, and they're facing a real problem today, it's politically a challenge to motivate action. What can we do here in Rhode Island? I think we're doing some pretty good things, and there's a lot more to do. Earlier this year, I signed an executive order creating the state's first ever resiliency officer. I hope Sean's here. I was here earlier. This is exciting. It's a full-time person who all he's going to do is think about how to make Rhode Island more resilient and draw upon all of the other resources. More than any other issue I deal with, this requires a system-wide, Rhode Island system-wide approach. So for my own team, it's the Department of Health helping us think about how to deal with the extreme heat and health issues associated with that. We now have a food czar. We have a state in the country where the food czar. I think Sue might be here. It's about our food supply and making sure that's sustainable. Of course, DEM, Grover, we talk about stormwater, wastewater treatment. So I had tasked the new resiliency officer, and I thought it was important. I did a executive order early in the year to do a cybersecurity officer, full-time person reporting to me. It's important to coordinate our efforts, and the same thing with resiliency officer. And so he has, working with the team until next July, to come back to me with a statewide resiliency action plan. And again, we're all going to have to play our role. Businesses, small businesses, big businesses, and there's a few folks in here and helping us figure out resiliency in the manufacturing sector. So I'm excited. I am excited. Like, you said, Michelle, look, we're the ocean state. 27 out of 39 of our cities and towns are coastal, 400 miles of coastline. It's who we are. We have a vested interest, especially unique interest, in going at resiliency in a real way. And we're going to do everything we can to do it.
Thanks, Governor. I'll just observe, I think Janine Burke Wells is here too. That wastewater treatment vulnerability study that DEM did was another collaboration with grant money coming from the Housing and Urban Development folks at Commerce. But a key aspect of it was identifying how to mitigate risk. So we've seen, the treasurer mentioned the solar panels at the Newport wastewater treatment facility. We've seen the Burn in Warwick. Warren and other communities are looking at our 19 major wastewater treatment facilities, but now they have information about how to mitigate risk. But sometimes it's going to be a short-term solution, and a crazy dramatic let the water in approach will be needed in the future.
If I could, let me jump in and mention two quick things that haven't been mentioned yet that the state of Rhode Island is also doing that I think is really terrific. One is what I call in my office the common app for solar installations. When I was elected and I was going around with solar installers, they were saying, look, every town has its own routine for how you can get this done. And I have a 3-day job installing solar, and it's a 3-day job trying to work through the process. So working with the Department of Administration, working with the Governor's Energy Office, working with the League of Cities and Towns, we now have the majority of Rhode Island's population in towns that have committed to a common app. So that if you're an installer, it's on your iPad or whatever, and you can just go and do it. And the legislation passed a law to make it statewide and implemented, and I know Carol's implementing that. If you could lower the cost of solar by turning a 3-day regulatory and approval effort for the installer into a 1-day or 1-hour project, you have just brought down the cost of solar in a very significant way. And it's been at no cost because nobody had a big vested interest in having their own special Coventry way of putting solar panels on the roof, or their own special East Greenwich way of putting solar panels on the roof. So that's just, and to continue to look for simple efficiencies like that, that are process efficiencies, I think can be something Rhode Island can lead on. I'm hoping what Rhode Island's doing on that can actually go throughout Reggie and off through the rest of the country. And the other thing is that we are pushing the system operator who runs our grid and FERC through something called the IMAP process to tilt the balance of what gets recognized and credited and doesn't in our energy markets so that renewables get more credit. Not too long ago, you could not get what's called a capacity payment for being available and able to serve the load if you were renewable. And we pushed and pushed and pushed, and now FERC and the ISO have baked in capacity payments, which means that that's a whole new revenue stream for those renewables. And those things are boring, and they are technical, and they are systematic. But because they're systematic, they interface all across everywhere and change those pricing dynamics in favor of where we want to go. And those are things that are happening with leadership from Rhode Island. I don't see other places in the country, so those are two big kudos to all of you who are involved in those.
Yeah, I want to give the legislature credit on that as well. The legislature did some great work. My office was hugely involved, and Janet and Carol. But, the property tax treatment of solar. We did, over the past couple of years, we passed and supported a handful of bills to enable community solar, easier, more efficient installations of solar. The infrastructure bank is doing a very good job providing, low-cost capital for solar installations, in municipal buildings. So folks deserve a lot of credit, and I do think Rhode Island is a leader in that regard. And it's a lot, you're exactly right. Sometimes it might sound boring, but if it's easy and not complicated, and you have a one-stop shop. That's why we started the infrastructure bank. It was meant to be a one-stop shop. It really hastens the pace of adoption.
We punch above our weight.
That is my own personal motto.
And I was at a wonderful stakeholder forum led by Chris Kurtz from the Office of Energy Resources just a couple of days ago, with all of the solar developers and with the Cardinal Community presentation by the Nature Conservancy and Rosemont, Rhode Island, and Audubon. And one of the things the developers were mentioning was that we have strong state laws on distributed generation. We have strong state targets, and that makes this a good place to locate a business. But they were mentioning the permitting and the juxtaposition of state and local rules. And Terry Gray offered to have a meeting at DM. We'd like to pursue being with the governor's support, but to really look at that sector and see if we can streamline the permitting, as well as working with communities, so we have a consistent approach.
It's an easy way to drop price while adding convenience.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up at that forum, Governor, was the Resilient Rhode Island Act, and the fact that these aggressive targets under the law, 10% reduction from 1990 levels by 2020, 45% reductions of greenhouse gas emissions by 2035, and an 80% reduction by 2050. That these aggressive goals are one of the reasons people feel that Rhode Island is a good place to bring their clean energy. So the question is, can we reasonably expect to hit those goals?
Yes, I think so. First of all, I think that bold and aggressive goals matter. like, in my position, certainly I can't do all of this work, but if we set a goal and we have shared values, then it's a system-wide approach and everybody is pulling on the oar in the same direction. And again, I think that maybe the challenge of climate change, more than almost anything, with the possible exceptions of the opioid crisis, requires everybody to do their part. There's no one department, you know. Fixing the roads, that's primarily DOT. This is across the board, and it's the advocacy groups and whatnot. So anyway, I'm a big believer in set a goal, the community reacts to it, and we push ourselves in that direction on every front. I do think we can get there. I do think we can hit the goals. We're doing very well towards the short-term goal. You know, obviously, the next tranche of goals is harder. And I think we have to get more serious about transportation if we're going to realistically be able to hit it. And so that's something that, you know, Carol's team and I are going to have to work even harder on because the emissions of vehicles and transportation are real. And that's something that I think probably is an honest assessment to say if we don't have a more robust TCI program, it's going to be hard to hit the next tranche. But yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. I think we can do it.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse, we recently been reading about some pretty stunning proposals in regard to what the current administration calls ending the war on coal.
Yeah.
Could you comment on how those impact the energy market and just give us your perspective?
Well, the dumbest one, which is a high bar in this crowd, has been this notion that Secretary Perry has fired over to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission saying, we want you to figure out a way to pay more for companies that have coal sitting around so that they can burn it. To really understand how dumb that is, though, you have to have a little bit of the backstory, which I won't dwell on because I think everybody in this one knows it. But the fossil fuel industry has set up a huge operation, an apparatus of climate denial. And in order to be effective with their climate denial, they have these messages that they have very carefully tested that, if they're delivered frequently, create doubt in the public mind about the reality of climate science. It was never the intention of the fossil fuel industry in creating those messages to have them be true. That was not a part of the equation. They were only designed to be effective at creating doubt about climate change and slowing up progress and giving their flags talking points. So now they have a problem where they have all these positions and they're trapped in their nonsense that was created for public relations purposes, not because it's true. So now they have to pretend that a coal plant is more reliable than wind. And the talking point is, there's that coal plant burning away, and if you've got a big enough pile of coal, you're good forever. And there's wind, on a day where there's not a lot of wind, you're not going to get any energy, right? Obvious. Yeah, until you go to Iowa, which is 35% wind and climbing, and talk to the system operator who runs their grid and says, it's actually easy to design the algorithm that lets us know how much of our wind is actually base load. They count wind as base load in Iowa. This is not the Sierra Club. This is the system operator for the grid. And the same is true with solar. You can bake it into your mix in a way that it provides real capacity, and you add batteries and it's real capacity 24/7. So it's founded on this totally phony notion that clean power, renewable power, wind and solar aren't reliable power. And I was really glad to see it got a very cool reception from the sitting FERC commissioners, and a gaggle of former FERC commissioners, Republican and Democrat alike, have just written a public letter saying, that's ridiculous.
Well,
And even economically, it makes no sense. So, back to the point about the renewables are actually very reliable once you can run something as simple as an algorithm that charts what amount of it is absolutely reliable base load. But on the other side, Brayton Point was a coal plant. It went down for a year because the coal silo fell in on the plant. They have scheduled and unscheduled outages at coal plants all the time. One of the biggest coal plants in Tennessee had to close because global warming had raised the temperature of the river so much that the water coming in wouldn't cool the plant adequately, so they had to dial back their output. That's not reliable. So, you know, it kind of makes you want to bang your head against the wall when you see a purported grown-up who is in a position of responsibility, like the Secretary of Energy of the United States of America, fire off something that, if you know at all what you're talking about, is flagrantly stupid. You know, it's just really embarrassing to see. But it shows two things. One, the power of the fossil fuel industry to get people to believe this nonsense that was never created to be true. And second, on the brighter side, there's actually a lot of pushback when it's stupid enough. From Republican appointees on the commission now, and from former Republican appointees on the commission. And around the Senate, a lot of my Republican colleagues, their response to this.
Actually,
Not
one of the most
enthusiastic.
hopeful things you're saying is that these policies are so outrageous that they ally everyone else to actually be rational.
Yeah, yep, yep.
It's too bad it has to get so outrageous though. Before
Yeah,
we get
you'd
a
like-
modicum of rationality. That's
You'd like there to be a better way, right?
right.
So we have, we're wrapping up, so I'm going to ask one last question, Governor, and ask you to turn it into your closing statement.
Okay.
So the question is really general, which is, we talked a lot about reacting to federal changes. Could you tell us more about what we can do at a state level to confront climate change?
So I think we just have to continue to do what we're doing. Here's what I'd say. If we execute, if we are successful in hitting the goals that we talked about today, come up with a carbon fee system and a market on a regional basis that we feel good about, or get it done on a national level. If we actually hit the RGGI targets, which we signed up for, and continue to invest in technology with some of the proceeds, if we have a resiliency action plan next summer and begin to really, execute on it, if we hit the goals set out in the lead by example, I love nothing more than driving down the highway and seeing DOT changing the light bulbs. It's simple but important, it matters. So, and on and on and on. If we do continue the work we're doing and achieve the goals, if we hit our 1,000 megawatt goal, going from 100 to 1,000 in a handful of years is not a small task. And as I say, it's going to require us to do everything. And participating in regional RFPs and putting forward a mix of affordable, renewable, clean energy resources for Rhode Island. If we execute in a collective way, businesses, nonprofits, every department of government, I feel great about our future. I worry still. I worry about the political realities of, as I said earlier, on a gorgeous sunny day, are we all appropriately, urgently focused on getting ready for rising seawater and rising temperatures? We're going to hit and exceed CPP targets, but if the politics doesn't allow, but right now there's 16 Democratic governors in America, 16. The majority of this country, the Republican Party, is the party of the majority by any measure. That doesn't trouble me so much, except for the fact that if in order to be a Republican, your religion has to be opposing climate change, that's a problem for America. So we're going to continue to do what we're doing in Rhode Island. We're going to set our sets high. We're going to work together as a community and make Rhode Island a sustainable, resilient, and clean place. But I guess I'll end by saying thank God we have Senator Whitehouse in Washington, because we need the politics of this issue to change. And that's on every single one of us it took me about 10 seconds to fight back against the president who pulled us out of Paris. Speak up, speak out, and don't let this guy get away with it, because our nation's future depends on us taking action.
Closing comments.
I just want to thank the governor for joining us. We have, this is the first time that we've been blessed with having a governor come and speak and join the panel conversation and describe the things that are going on. A lot of what is going to win this game takes place in the weeds. It takes place through hard work, changing systems, changing baselines, changing rules, fixing things that people often don't even know exist, like ISO dispatch priority systems. And that's what governments do. We're at that level. I get to give speeches. Gina's got to do time map, Reggie, Common App, all the different things that are taking place. And so I'm grateful that she came to share what she's done with us today. And if you could just give her one more thank you.